Well, welcome once again back. Um, we're having just a tad bit of difficulty. I tried to do something, and tell you what. Oh boy, we're gonna play a little bit of music. I got to give us a little bit of time because I think it's this one because I had a little trouble today doing this stuff, but it's okay. It is okay. Things like this happen. The good thing about it is we can continue to live we can continue to live stream. Wonderful. Let's see. I think it's this one. Anyhow, what we're going to do is we are going to try this again. Oh, I can't even spell. Anyhow, I apologize for all this stuff that's going on. We are having some technical difficulties, and we will start it very, very shortly. I have to bring the guest in. Like I said, we had a little bit of issues, but it's okay because we got it now, I believe. I hope. All right, there we go. Now we're here. All right. Anyhow, we just had a wonderful first session with Marco Santana. What a wonderful meeting I had with him. Session we had with him talking about his journey from I believe it was a patient in AA to a CCHT to an RN, and then now in the role that he holds now. And one of the roles that he talked about in this session was the role of biomed, and that is our next session. And I am excited to have him here. Like I said, he's going to be a little bit behind, and that's okay. That's because it's on us. I had a feeling that I was going to have an issue with trying to do what I did this morning, but it is what it is. We got it. Let me check. So, like I said, if you can just be let me check, and we'll go from there. But it's okay. Technical things happen. And especially when you're trying to do Zoom to RTPM and to LinkedIn. Oh, and I believe he showed up. So, ladies and gentlemen, as soon as he gets mic'd up and ready to go, we get him in the backstage. He's just running. Our audio technical guys had a little trouble. They're just getting a new mic for him, and getting him get ready to hit the stage. So I am glad that he's here. Charlie gets mic'd up and ready to go. We get him in the backstage. He's just running. Our audio technical. Hang on. Whoa. I think I've got issues on my end. I don't know if it's on. It might be on my end. Hang on. You got me running in the background, Charlie?
I got you turned off.
Okay, good. Because I was hearing myself. I was like, uh-oh. Either I just turned to ghost or something,
Yep. I hear you.
Anyhow, I do appreciate you coming on here. And Charlie, welcome to the Kidney Trails building.
Yeah.
Building it actually kind of feels like a in-person conference. You know how you get to an in-person conference and next thing you know, this goes wrong, this happens. Mark everything just goes bonkers, but it is okay. So things happen, it gets all fun and games, and then next thing you know, we're here and we're good to go, right?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get my lighting squared away here.
Oh, get the lighting squared away. It's no
That's too bright. This is too bright.
Oh, there we go.
I tried to do all this yesterday, so at least I had some color in my face. Yeah, that's better.
Well, I think the stage lighting guys got it all taken care of. Your audio sounds great. So I think we're going to go ahead and bring you up on stage. But I do, ladies and gentlemen, here's our next session presenter, Charlie Johnson. Charlie is from H&S Technical. He's a biomedical equipment technician. And if I say anything wrong, you're more than welcome to interject. So Charlie and I met probably a few weeks ago, a month or two ago, via Zoom, and then but we've been connected on LinkedIn for a little bit too.
Yeah.
So that's been a good thing. I need to bring this up. So anyhow, we are glad to have you here and glad to hear about your experience. And that is something as a young biomed. One of the things Charlie and I and some of us were talking in the meetings was it's kind of the wisdom and the one that needs to be taught. So that's the best way I can put it right now. So to be here, Charlie, to be able to moderate for you, it really is an honor, and I am grateful for that.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate being here.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and start, and we're going to talk about a little bit about biomed. The
Okay.
thing that Marco said that scared him half to death. So talking about biomed, you go back, you've been around for quite a while. You've learned a lot. What initially brought you into the dialysis industry, and how did you know you wanted to become a biomedical technician? And take it away.
Well, truth be told, I didn't know I wanted to be a biomedical technician. I had always, had the influence of my parents. My father being a physician, my mother being a nurse. I figured I was always going to do something in the medical field. So went through high school, went through college doing life science courses, advanced chemistries, and even took Latin in high school as a second language. So because most of the words in medical journals and things are all derived from Latin bases. So I took Latin instead of Spanish or French or whatever else they offered in high school. So I did that. And then when I got to college, I had 2 years in, and it was during the Vietnam War era. It was around the late 60s, early 70s. But I got my draft notice. So what I ended up doing is I got drafted in 71. Was in the Army. I was, I was doing pretty good. Back in 71, I, went in there, went through basic training, and they said, okay, what do you want to be while you're in the service? So I looked up. I said, oh, I'd like to be, either a medic, or I'd learn that, or I'd like to be work on communications, be a lineman, something like that with electronics and communications. So they said, oh, okay, fine. So they looked down my my little profile and kind of kept going from there, and went on and saw that, oh, look, this guy's got 2 years of college. We'll put him in the infantry, which doesn't make any sense at all. But anyway, I put me in the infantry, and friends of mine that had been in service, they said, whatever you do, don't volunteer for anything. Well, I didn't see that as a very good learning opportunity, so I decided that I would volunteer for just about anything, just to kind of learn, get a little bit deeper, get myself known, so who I was. So I volunteered to be the master sergeant's briefcase carrier in basic training, which kind of kept me from having to carry a pack and a rifle during training, which was great. But then also, I when I got also volunteered for the motor pool to be, get a military driver's license. By the way, I was 21 years old when I went in, so I was a little bit older than a lot of the recruits. But I got my military driver's license, so I got to drive people around rather than go through some of the training that they had going for me. So and then I got to infantry training, and I kept my military driver's license, learned all about infantry and how to shoot different weapons and blow up bridges and kill people and stuff like that, and just be a warrior. But then I was drafted at the time where they were starting to de-escalate things in Vietnam, and I was in one of the first groups of infantry trainees that didn't go to Vietnam. I ended up And they split our group up into halves, and half of us went to Anchorage, Alaska. The other half went to Fairbanks, Alaska, which is a little bit further north. And so when I got up there, obviously I had my military driver's license, so I was a driver. Also volunteered for projection school, and also volunteered for NCO school. So I spent about a year and a half of my time up in Anchorage, Alaska, playing Army and stuff, but went to NCO school. I volunteered for that. Matter of fact, I even volunteered for KP. You believe that? They talked about, KP being such a dirty job and all that stuff. I said, well, I got to do this at least once. So I volunteered for KP just so they wouldn't pick me for KP. I basically did it on my own terms. So anyway, went to NCO school. I came out of NCO school as a Sergeant E5, which was great because it was definitely an increase in pay. They put me in charge of, a squad. So I was a squad leader, and I was able to, I went to projectionist school as well. So I learned the audio video stuff. And whenever they had training sessions and stuff, I would go in, I'd actually set up the projector and the audio visual stuff so that, people could see and had graphics going on. And we even went up to the rural parts of Alaska, up in Sitka and, up above the Arctic Circle. And we took a projector and took some movies up there, and we showed them full run movies up there to the natives, which was kind of neat because it was like an exchange of training type thing. So I had a good time. But anyway, got out of the Army, and I worked for a construction company. It was a residential type construction company, and like I said, I still didn't know I was going to be a biomed. But went into the construction company, and I worked with the sheet metal guy who taught me working with sheet metal. And we did gutters and sidings and stuff for houses, but it was a roofing company, roofing construction. Eventually, they had carpenters, they had painters, they had tuck pointers, and I got a chance to work with each one of those people. So I kind of learned to be a pretty handy guy. And I was pretty, my father wanted to be an engineer. He didn't really want to be a doctor, but he wanted to be an engineer because that's what interested him. But his father said, you go to medical school, I'll pay for it. If you don't, you pay for it. So he said, okay, I'll go to medical school. So he went to medical school, but he ended up in industrial medicine, which kept him close to the engineering and kept him close to the things that he liked to do. But then after that, we kind of got into a bind, and in the construction business, they had a big tornado. I was born and raised in St. Louis. So one year we had a big tornado come through the city of St. Louis, tore up a whole bunch of houses. And so we worked really hard, along with other construction companies and rehab workers, stuff like that. Got new roofs on a lot of the houses in South St. Louis, and new siding and new gutters. And that's when we got the carpenters in, and they started doing room additions and doing this. And I did a little electrical work because nobody knew how to do it, and they didn't want to call an electrician. So I kind of dabbled in that a little bit at the time. But, I learned this and learned that. And finally, after a while, I was out there in St. Louis summer weather, which was, about the beginning of August. It was 100 degrees outside. It was not a cloud in the sky, but being close to the Mississippi River, the humidity was 100%. And I thought to myself, Charlie, you're smarter than this. You need to do something. You need to have an inside job. So, and about that time, all the homes that had been damaged from the tornado a couple of years before were under new roofs, and the work was kind of falling off. So I ended up getting laid off. But luck would have it, my sister, who was a nurse, and my younger sister was a nurse. My older sister was a nurse as well. My older sister worked in Chicago. My younger sister worked in St. Louis, but she turned me on to her friend who worked for her. She was a nurse, and she got asked if she wanted to head up this new clinic that they were going to start. They wanted to do chronic dialysis. And basically, she had a home training unit, so she ended up being the head nurse of that dialysis clinic. They did some chronic in-center dialysis, but mostly they were geared toward home training. And she had a technician with her. It was actually used to assist with vasectomies, believe it or not. But he came over and worked for her, and repaired the machines and things like that. And kind of went from here to there, doing different stuff. So I'm trying to get my PowerPoint up here so I can kind of give you a little introduction to stuff. Let me get back here on where was I?
Okay, try it now.
Oh, there you are. I see it. But yeah, and it all works. Yeah, but so I got in. She had a technician. I decided to go and work with her for a while to see what was up, and I said, I think I'd like to do this because it keeps me inside. It's what I like to do. Is I like to work on. Gives me stuff to work on, and I'm gonna need. See, what do I need to do here? I need to.
So
I
let's
need
see. You should
I
be
need-
able to share your screen.
Yeah, I need to get you back up as a big person.
I should be right here beside you now.
There you go. Okay, I was just on the wrong screen. But if I want to share my screen, there we go.
There we go.
That's my introduction. Thank you very much. And I don't know if you still have me up in the corner or not.
Well, we will. Let's see. There we go. I think we're good now. I hope.
Okay. Little history. This is when I started dialysis, we did, it was back, I'll tell you what, this is year 1975, 74, 70, going into 75. So a lot of this stuff, maybe some of your viewers aren't familiar with or have no idea what's going on. But this will come into play a little bit later. I'm sorry about the resolution on the pictures, but they were obviously, it was taken with an old camera, then switched it over to digital from analog, and so you really can't see much very well. But what you got here is one of the first dialysis machines. This is a direct Willock machine, and on top of it is a keel dialyzer. Now these dialyzers, you're familiar with the dialysis membrane. I don't know if you were familiar with cuprofane. I know everybody knows polysulfone and cellulose acetate with the hollow fibers, which they're using now. But this was a plate dialyzer, and they used what they call cuprofane. It was engineered in Germany. And basically, this dialyzer had to be assembled and before each dialysis, had to be disassembled afterwards, cleaned out, and rebuilt for the next dialysis. And basically, what you have here is a series of support layers. And then there was a film of cuprofane, which was the membrane. Then there was another support layer, then another layer of cuprofane, another support layer, another layer of cuprofane, another support layer, and then your final layer. And all these layers were bolted down. You can see my cursor, can't you? Yeah, you can see they were bolted down and torqued down with specific pounds per square inch. You can see where the dialysate is running in, and over here is where the dialysate runs out. All you can really see down here, you can't really see the pumps, but this is your heat exchanger. This is your old-time heat exchanger, where the old dialysate would run in. Over here was your supply of dialysate that would run in through the machine and then run down the drain. So it was basically a single pass type machine. And there were your monitors, and all the concentrate was mixed up by hand in a vat, and then the dialysate was already made up when it went into the machine. But this is just like one of the first ones. Now, when I got on, you can do this. When I got to dialysis, they were using the coil dialyzer. This is basically the same principle, but it was a disposable dialyzer. We had the cuprofane membrane in here, but it was wrapped around a support layer of just plastic mesh. You had the blood lines going in and then the blood lines coming out, but it was rolled up and rolled up. And the reason I showed you this is so that you could get an idea of what I kind of ran into when I was in my first dialysis unit. This was my first dialysis machine. It's a Travenol RSP, and that little coil would sit inside of this canister on a canister inside another canister on top of this machine. What this machine actually did, there was a 120-liter tank below that you fill it up with water. And back then they were doing strictly acetate dialysis. You fill that up with 120 liters of water. You put in a jug of concentrate and mix, and you'd mix it up. There was a dialysate pump in here that you could recirculate it as long as you kept the flow meter off. You recirculate the solution inside the tank that would kind of help mix it up. But in order to hurry that mix up, we had plastic or even sometimes wooden canoe paddles that we would put inside the tank and swish it up to make it mix up a little bit quicker. Now, the reason they call this a recirculating single pass system, that's what RSP stands for, is that you had a canister on top and you would fill that up with the solution from below through this flow meter. You would fill this up to about 8 liters and you let that recirculate. Now, when that would recirculate, it would recirculate through a heater and, of course, later on with a blood leak detector, and it would heat up that dialysate in the tank, in the canister on the top, and that was your recirculating part. Now, your single pass part was that fact you would constantly, once the treatment started, you would run the dialysate in, usually at a flow rate of about 6 liters a minute through this flow meter. And what it would do, it would basically overflow the canister in here into a tubing that would go down the drain. So you were constantly putting in new dialysate into this canister. Now, these dialysis treatments took about 6 hours. So that was the reason for the large amount of dialysate mixed up in the batch. And of course, this was a completely modular system. On the system, you had your blood leak detector controls here, your heater temperature controls here, and it's not lit up, but this was kind of your control panel. And it was basically a mass of switches to turn on and turn off your pumps, your diverter valve to drain everything, your on and off switch, basically. But on the front of it, you had your blood pump. You had your pressure monitor device. And this was basically the other alarms that you have as far as patient alarms. And contrast this to what we have now as far as machine monitoring and patient monitoring. It seems a little antiquated. But what you had here, this monitor here, you had a micro switch here. In the lines was a built-in pillow. And that pillow, when it became filled with fluid or blood, would depress that micro switch and let the monitor know that there was flow going into the dialyzer. Now, when that, when the access would be, would become occluded, or you wouldn't be pulling as much as you would if the needles were misplaced, that pillow would collapse and give you a negative pressure warning. Now, that was a negative pressure of the dialysate, but it was a negative pressure of the blood circuit on the arterial side. But as long as that pillow was filled with blood, you had an alarm and the blood pump would run. When you got your negative pressure alarm, when that pillow collapsed, the blood pump would stop. But as soon as it filled up again, the blood pump would start pumping again and pump that blood around. Over here, this was your venous pressure monitor. Now, basically just a manometer, and it had a little for the biomeds, and people were familiar with the old type thermostats you used to have in your house. There was a mercury switch in here. And as the pressure would go up, that mercury switch would tilt. And when it got to a certain point, it would shut the blood pump off and give you a positive pressure alarm. And that's how you monitored your blood pressure for your patient. In order to ultrafiltrate on these dialyzers, you actually had to get your calculator out. You had to know the coefficient ultrafiltration coefficient of your dialyzer, and be able to do the math with arterial. Well, you didn't have arterial pressure, but you used to use venous pressure, and you went by that to see how much you could remove, how much fluid you can remove in 6 hours. Well, basically, obviously, the blood pressure going in didn't cause enough pressure in there, so you had to actually restrict the blood flow going back to the patient with a screw clamp, and that was on an arterial. The venous pressure chamber would sit here, kind of hang from this little hook, and the monitor line would come up into here, and you'd get your pressure on this manometer here. But as you needed more ultrafiltration, because people back then, they would gain 6, 8, 10, 12 liters, give it your choice of whatever it is. But you'd have to tighten up that screw clamp in order to meet the pressure that you needed to ultrafiltrate that much in the 6-hour period. And I see you smiling. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. But that's the way dialysis was. And that was the first dialysis machine I ever saw. And I was totally intimidated with all the stuff that went on. As I got to know the machine, it was after a while, it was no big deal. It was just a bunch of tubing, a couple of, some pumps that were impeller, and the flow was impeller driven. And there was some electronics in here, but it was all the electronics for the blood leak detector. And I don't know how many people had Zenith TVs, but the blood leak detector was made by Zenith, believe it or not. And it was basically the same as we use today. It was a light source and a sensor. And when it got dark in there to a certain point, you could select your sensitivity up here on this panel. And obviously the dialysate got dark if there was a blood leak, which there were quite often with these type of dialyzers. It would alarm. You had to reset. You obviously would stop the blood pump because it was connected to the outlet the blood pump was plugged into. But you could stop it. You could mute it. You could fix it. You could do whatever you need to do. But we had certain protocols for when it blood, because when that canister got blood in it, it stayed full of blood. It wasn't like a hollow fiber dialyzer where the blood would just go down the drain. But that canister would actually fill up with blood. You'd have to empty the canister, change the dialyzer, run new dialysate up in there, let it heat up, then restart the dialysis treatment all over again. But obviously you had to dump what was in there to get the blood out and get the fresh dialysate in there. But that was quite a chore. And like I said, it was 6-hour dialysis, and this is one of the first dialysis machines that I came in contact with. But my whole purpose, or one of the purposes of them hiring me at Barnes Hospital as a technician, was that we had, dialysis definitely took 6 hours or more for each of the patients. They had makeshift rooms. They actually had 2 dialysis rooms. One had 6 patients in it, and one had 4 patients in it, and a room adjacent to it with two beds in it. Actually, beds for patients who couldn't deal sitting in the chairs. But the nurses actually ran the dialysis, and it was all a nurse-run thing. But they had 2 rooms. They had 2 nurses in each room, and they had another nurse that would kind of double off into that separate patient room. They had only the two stations in it. But what they wanted to do when the patient crashed, they needed those 2 nurses to take care of that patient. But they needed somebody to monitor those patients, other patients that were doing the dialysis treatments. So one of the things that they wanted to do, they wanted to train me to monitor the patients. I said, okay, I'm all in for that. So kind of a long story short, they trained me how to set up lines, set up machines, monitor the patients, take the blood pressures, if they were having to work on somebody else. Eventually, I learned how to, they taught me how to cannulate. I would actually do the cannulations of the patients. Of course, when we started, but let me back up a little bit. Let me show you another machine that's even an older one. This is their Travenol's 100-liter tank. It kind of worked the same way, but it only had room for 100 liters of dialysate at a time, and that 100 liters would last about 2 hours. And what they would have to do, they had a separate container up on the wall that held 100 liters of fluid. And the way they make their dialysate was they call up to the renal division and said, okay, we need a 2K bath for this patient. They would mix up the dry chemicals. They would put them in this vat here with the 100 liters of DI water. We used deionization at that time. We didn't have an RO system, but we used DI. But they would fix that up. They put the chemicals in there. They'd mix it up with a paddle, okay, with the paddle, because there's no pumps up there. They had to do it, mix all the mixing by hand. Then after 2 hours, when this dialysate was spent, they would empty it. They would take this dialysate. It was already pre-warmed. They would actually pour this into the tank, for another, and use that for another 2 hours. You can see the hose kind of hanging on the corner here from where they transferred the dialysate from one container to the other. Now, basically, these were set up for coil dialyzers. They had a little tube in the middle, and they were set up for coil dialyzers. We even had one that had a double stem in it, and you could actually put 2 coil dialyzers in it for those patients who needed to lose a lot of weight or needed a lot of dialysis. This shows a picture of using a hollow fiber dialyzer. Now, what they did, they just left the dialysate ports open and let the dialysate kind of go in and out, and whatever the ultrafiltrate was, finally it would fill up with ultrafiltrate, and they'd have to redo it. But they do it the same 2 hours, and then redo the dialysate in the tank. And I thought that was pretty interesting. They use this in the acute unit. There were 2 nurses over there, but the doctors basically did the dialysis, and these are for acute patients. They actually did cut downs of the femoral arteries in order to get access, and you sometimes use a carotid to get the blood returned. But that's how they got the access with those. Let's see. And this was another machine that I was confronted with. It's called a Ready machine. They use this for home training. This uses sorbent cartridge dialysis technology. This is great for a home patient because they could use tap water. They use the same kind of coil dialyzer, and that's why I showed that to you first. And they would put that in this. This is about a 4-liter amount of water that you put in, but it was tap water. What they do, they recirculate the water through a sorbent cartridge, which sat over here, and that would basically remove everything that was in the water. And up here was what they call an infusate pump, and that would infuse concentrate into this liter of water, and it was calibrated to infuse enough concentrate in order to bring the conductivity up to where it needed to be in this particular canister. But once everything was set and the patient was on, this is actual home patient, by the way. You can see his little backyard and his little plant garden back here. But once he was on, he'd start the recirculating pump. And every time that water would recirculate through the sorbent cartridge, it would remove the concentrate. It would remove the effluent from the dialysate. And basically, you'd have treated water coming back through. So the infusate pump had to run and continually and reinfuse the concentrate in order to keep the conductivity up. But it also had to continue to filter out all the effluent, so it would filter that out through the sorbent cartridge. And the accesses that they use now was, I don't know if anybody on this particular Zoom presentation had ever seen a shunt. The shunts went out a long time ago, but this is what they call the shunt. It was the Scribner shunt. Most of the people had them in their arms. This guy had his shunt in his leg. And what it was is it was 2 pieces of celastic tubing. Let's see if I have a picture of it. Yeah, there's his one in the arm. Had 2 pieces of celastic tubing. They were surgically implanted into an artery and into a vein. So you had a loop here that ran around. There was always a separation and a connector here on the end. So when you came time for dialysis, you would clamp these 2 lines, disconnect the line here and hook up your arterial line and your venous line to these to the shunt, or these catheters here, I guess you could call them. And that's how dialysis took place. That's if you didn't have a permanent access. And I think they were still working on doing fistulas. Fistulas were coming into vogue right then, as well as I think they used bovine grafts. I don't know if anybody used graft. I know they use Gore-Tex grafts now still, but back then they used these pig veins, or and put a bovine graft in there, cow veins put in there instead of a fistula. They just linked up an artery to a vein and looped it around, and it was basically an artificial, but it was biocompatible to a certain point. But that's how you would dialyze. But then, of course, the big part about it is you had your blood vessels kind of hanging out in between dialysis treatments. They would essentially wrap these up with elastic bandages to kind of keep them covered. And these two bull clamps is what they used to clamp the lines when they went to connect for dialysis. But they keep these bull clamps clamped to the elastic bandage in case this ever came apart. They at least had a clamp available to clamp that line up so they wouldn't bleed out. So much for the Rady machine. Let's see what we got here. But there's a shunt, and that's what I basically learned on. I had a lot of those in the clinic because that's what they put in first before they put in the permanent accesses. One thing too, it was a teaching hospital, so we had plenty of new stuff coming through because all the manufacturers of dialysis machines wanted us to evaluate their equipment, even pre-production stuff. And I showed you Drake Willock before, and like I said, there wasn't a blood pump on that. I think initially they used the patient's pressure from his heart to push the blood pump through that keel dialyzer, which was probably pretty much wear and tear on the heart tissue, if you ask me about it. But Drake Willock finally came up with a proportioning system that they used. And since we're using acetate dialysis, what they did, they built a cylinder that was 34 times larger than a concentrate segment. Okay, so there you got your 34-to-1 proportioning. And you had a concentrate segment, concentrate cylinder here, a concentrate cylinder here, and you had a diverter valve up here. And it was all worked on water pressure. You turn the flow meter up to get your flow, it would actually push this part of the cylinder over. And as it pushed this part of the cylinder over, it would fill this side with water. It would come in through the diverter valve, fill up this side with water, and fill up this side with concentrate. Of course, 34-to-1. And when it got to the other side, this little shifter would come over and it would fall down that little indent thing, and it would pull that spool over and shift it to where the water would come in through the other side and push the cylinder or push the piston back the other way and fill up this side. As these two sides filled up, these sides would push out and the concentrate would come up through the port here, and the 34 parts of water would come up through the port here and into a mixing chamber, and that's how your dialysate would form. And they used this type of proportioning system in just about all their machines, as long as they were using acetate dialysis. Let's see. But anyway, as we're going along, we got to use the Century machine. This is the only one I could find was of the C2RX. But the Century machine, just take away this module at the top and take away these two little ports top, basically had a Century machine. And it was basically the first integrated type of machine. Cobe had designed this. I think they had the BR1 or something like that a while ago, but that they had the issues with their pumps. But this was the first fully integrated dialysis machine that they had. You had a blood pump built in. Your infusion pump was over here. You had your air detector, line clamp. You had your negative pressure control. Of course, this is all for negative pressure dialysis. You had your little knob for adjusting your pressure. You had your pressure limits, your pressure monitor. Of course, this one only monitored venous pressure. You could get a machine that had another meter down here that would measure arterial pressure as well. And then you had your buttons for rinse and for bypass and things like that. This machine was kind of unique because you could actually see the ultrafiltration. And after you did all your, after you did all your calculations and got through on dialysis, you set your negative pressure according to your TMP calculations and your venous pressure. You could put this machine in bypass. On the inside of the machine, it had what they call a little fluidic capacitor. And through that, when you put it into bypass, the only thing that would go through that fluidic capacitor was your ultrafiltrate from your dialyzer. And that ultrafiltrate would flow through this little flow meter. And there's a little ball there, so you could actually see exactly what your ultrafiltration rate was. And it gave you a 0.1 to a 1 liter measurement per hour as far as ultrafiltrate goes, so you can see exactly how much you were ultrafiltrating. I think it actually went up to about 1.5 and maybe even 2. It's been a while, so I kind of forget. But you can actually see your ultrafiltration rate. You check that once an hour when you did your blood pressures, and then you take it out of bypassing and run the dialysis, and you continue to go. Now, this machine, TRX, when they finally decided that acetate dialysis wasn't doing much for anybody, it was just giving them low blood pressure towards the end of dialysis and making everybody sick. Because the premise was with acetate dialysis that the patient themselves would metabolize the acetate into bicarbonate, and it would kind of level out their pH in their body. But it basically kind of didn't work fast enough. So they went back to a dialysis type machine. Now, proportioning system in the Cove machine was a peristaltic pump. It had a connectivity monitor in it and a control where it controlled the speed of that peristaltic pump. It was like a teeny weeny blood pump, but it would suck the concentrate in according to a certain connectivity. And when it got to that connectivity, that pump would slow down and maintain its speed in order to maintain connectivity going through the control cells. And it did the same for the bicarb. In the original C2 machine, before the bicarb came in, there was just one pump that pumped the acetate. On this machine, when you retrofitted it, you added that component, and you added the front door, which had 2 more peristaltic pumps, one for the acid, one for the bicarb. And that ray basically worked the same way. It would monitor your and control your bicarb concentrate. It was also monitor your acid concentrate as well and make the dialysate. But bicarbonate actually wasn't a new thing. But back when I showed you the 100-liter tank, they actually, before acetate dialysis came in, where they just pour a jug into the mixed water, they actually had the chemicals from the renal division. They mix them in, they poured in, they actually bubbled in bicarb. They had a CO2 tank that would sit next to that 100-liter tank, and they would bubble bicarb in to keep the pH where it was supposed to be. But as things, they thought, well, we can make it easier. We'll just make acetate dialysis. So they did that. But later on, they found out that it wasn't really doing the patient any good. So Cove said, okay, well, we'll retrofit these machines. We'll make them into bicarb machines. And they built the C2RX. So that's a little bit of dialysis history. Of course, during my moving around, I was in St. Louis for a while. We had Cove C2 machines. Let me run this back again. Of course, most people might recognize the C3, which was our next generation. But I kind of ran into that machine when I moved to Louisiana. Just before I left St. Louis, they built a new unit for the facility I was in, and they put in an RO system. Like I said, when the old unit we were using DI, we had 3 different rooms, and it was kind of a hassle. But back then, like I said, I was learning dialysis, and I did pretty well. And as a matter of fact, I did so well they put me on the patient clinical schedule. Not only was I fixing machines, but I was working patient shifts, and actually dialyzing and doing the monitoring of the patients, because those RSPs weren't much to maintain. So I got my training there, and as we went on to I'm going to stop sharing here. Of course, he left, so let me go back to sharing again. There we go. I was doing dialysis, and I was thinking, okay, I'm pretty good at this, and everybody thought I was good. Always told me what a good job I was doing, and I always took the opportunities to go in when the drug reps came in to do a presentation. I always made it a point to sit in on those lectures, and of course they always brought food, which is great too, because it was hard to get out to get down in the cafeteria in the hospital to eat. But we built a new unit. We put in a central delivery system, which I don't think many people know what that is. Being familiar with all the newer stuff, but it was a central delivery system. The dialysate was manufactured basically in a back room along with the water, where the water system sat, and it would feed up to 10 to 16 stations. And I had a big vat of concentrate back there, would pull it in with gear pumps, and it was it had a connectivity monitor, and it would monitor the speed of the gear pumps and how much concentrate was coming in, and that's how it would regulate the connectivity. But it would make up heat the water, make up the dialysate, and it would pump it out to 16 stations where there were just basically patient monitoring stations out there in the clinic. That's basically, you could adjust your negative pressure there and do your patient treatments. You had your arterial and venous pressure monitors, of course, and blood leak detectors. But all the dialysate preparation was done in the back room by the central delivery system. And we had that for a while. Now, just as I was leaving St. Louis, we had bought a bunch of the Cove C2s. We were using that in a separate room where we did home training and self-care, where the patients actually did as much as everything. They set up their machines, they do their own venipunctures, they'd start themselves, they'd monitor themselves, they do their own blood pressures, they take themselves off, they give themselves saline with some assistance, if they felt their blood pressure was dropping, or if it was dropping, or if they didn't feel good. But the nurses were always there. But we basically, it was like I said earlier, Medicare had come in right when I started doing dialysis, and it was and the composite rate was so much that would pay so much for a dialysis treatment. Well, years gone by, everybody knows that composite rate for dialysis still stays basically the same as far as what Medicare will pay. So we had to find ways to save money. So with a few nurses and a lot of people doing their self-care, that kind of gave us a little out and freed up some of the staff to work in the chronic part of the unit. But just as I was leaving St. Louis and headed towards Louisiana, where I kind of followed our medical director down there and some of the renal fellows, they opened up a unit in Monroe, Louisiana. They had all code machines down there, but they were replacing the central system with single patient machines, because the central delivery system was becoming outdated and we couldn't get parts for it anymore. And Extracorporeal, who built it, was bought out by Baxter, and they weren't gonna support it anymore. So we were looking for machines. Believe it or not, we tested the Fresenius A and B machines while we were there. I know we're a little bit further down the alphabet now, but this is when the Fresenius first came out. A, I think they actually brought B machines in there for us to evaluate, and wanted basically, I think they were on kind of working towards the D machine when they finally switched over. But in the interim, we were kind of part of since it was a teaching hospital, this computer dialysis people came in, and they had a whole computer run and microprocessor controlled, and had keys that with embedded EEPROMs in them where you could load patient information. You could load up dialyzer reprocessing information, and the keys would match up. And you put the key in the machine, turn the key, it would download the patient information. All the tech had to do was input the pre-weight and the blood pressure, and everything else was taken care of because it knew what the patient's dry weight was going to be, knew what the formula was, knew what the dialysate was supposed to be. And we were at that time reusing dialyzers. They had a reuse system, and with the key too, with a key for each dialyzer, just like a key for each patient. And you put the key for the dialyzer in, it would actually know what the ultrafiltration rate of the dialyzer was, and it would transfer that information into the machine as far and along with the priming volume of the dialyzer, and put that in the machine. Machine would do all the calculations. Basically, all the tech would have to do when they were ready was push the blood pump and get it started. And that was kind of it. But they had trouble with their data collection system. So they used that for a while. They kept the dialysis reprocessing equipment, but got rid of the single patient machines, and eventually put in all Fresenius afterwards. But when I went to Louisiana, we had the Cobe C2s. We upgraded to the Cobe C3s. This was of course, was version 9, and the techs would have loved this because all the parameters on the screen were in hexadecimal. Of course, you know about the decimal system is like ones and zeros. The decimal system. This was all in hexadecimal. It was based on each decimal had 16 places. So you not only had to go 1 and 0, you had to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. 16 places. And you had to be able to translate that into an actual value when you were redoing all the controls. And they had 9 different circuit boards in here. Plus they were each board had a microprocessor. So, when I moved to Louisiana, I figured, well, it's time for me to learn about electronics. So I had a little microprocessor training when I was in St. Louis at Washington University. But then when I got down to Louisiana, I actually went to electronics school and got some learning on electronics so I could at least understand what was going on inside these machines. But we used these for a while. And then after about 10 years there, also down in Louisiana, we did peritoneal dialysis. That was coming back into vogue. This was a Baxter PD cycler that patients took home with them and used for overnight dialysis. They put a big 5-liter bag up here. They run the lines through a pump and these valves. There was a package that you set in here. There was a scale here that you would hang your drain bag on. And then what it would do during the night, this was actually a heater as well. It would heat up the dialysate, but the patient would hook up, get himself going, hit the start button, and he would actually sleep through the night. And this would actually cycle, give it a fill cycle, let it dwell for a couple hours. It would empty. It would weigh the effluent to see how much it filtrated. It'd make a note of that. It would deliver another fill for the peritoneum, and it would just kind of cycle through the night until that 5-liter bag was empty and the treatment was over. The patient would wake up, disconnect himself, and go on to work. But this is what we sent the patients home with a lot, was these PD cyclers. So I was definitely hitting the roads in Louisiana doing that stuff. Okay, and now, of course, you see the H machines. Everybody's kind of familiar with those. And that kind of brings me to my little journey to Dallas. After spending 10 years in Louisiana, I decided to move to Dallas and work for a company called Dallas Nephrology Associates. It was an association of dialysis or nephrologists. So we kind of went on from there. And that's where I got introduced to the Fresenius H machine was the first one to come out. And so we went on from there. And while I was in, I didn't mention this, but Well, I was in St. Louis, still working there. It was like 1978. I figured I knew enough, and I wanted to kind of be had a had a little recognition for what I had done as far as dialysis goes, and just didn't want to be a renal technician. And everybody said, "What's that?" Around then is when Bonent, Board of Nephrology Examiners, Nursing and Technology, came out with their first certification exam. I took it upon myself to drive up to ASN, which was being held in Chicago at that time, and sat for the 4-hour test, got certified, and became the first certified technician in the city of St. Louis. Thank you very much. But anyway, I kept my certification up till the present. And I was just recently recognized as having over 40 years with a Bonent certification. And I thank RJ for that, for the Bonent and the Bonent people. But anyway, I started working with DNA. And of course, we had this Fresenius H machine. And just kind of make a long story short, DNA had 13 brand new clinics in the Dallas area, and it was great. Of course, they were in competition with NMC at the time. So that's National Medical Care. And of course, they had the medical directorships at all the NMC units as well as their own units. But what ended up happening when they opened up these new units, kind of stole the patients from the NMC units, and they weren't kind of doing much anymore. So NMC decided they were going to buy out DNA. So they did that, moved all their patients to the new clinics. The doctors basically kept their medical directorships, and we had basically new new patients, new machines, new clinics. But at that time, like I told you in the beginning, I was trying to stay away from corporate dialysis, but I got meshed in with NMC, so I ended up having to do things their way. DNA kind of did things the way they're doing now. They had an area technical manager, and they had techs in each of the clinics. When we went to NMC, of course, every clinic had to have a chief tech, and they had to have another tech along with them to take over for the chief tech when he was gone. So we kind of had to fall into that kind of environment. And now, of course, I worked with NMC for about a year, and then a year later, FMC bought NMC. And we said, oh, good, we're going back to computers. We're going back to the way we were used to, and data management systems and computers and all this stuff. And, finally it did, but it took a long time. But then I got kind of promoted up into, by the way, DNA had a centralized reprocessing center, which I ended up eventually managing. We had 16 DRS4s. If anybody knows what those were, those are reprocessing machines. We used formaldehyde and bleach to disinfect and clean. And we also did all the dialyzers for over 13 clinics. We ended up doing about 1,000 dialyzers a day. What we do, we'd get them from the facilities. We had drivers. We get them from the used dialyzers from the facilities. We clean them, disinfect them, incubate them because we used 1% formaldehyde, and we send them back to the facilities where they would eventually use them on the patient. So each patient had 2 dialyzers, and as one was getting clean, they were using the other one, and it kind of went back and forth from that. But so anyway, learning was a big part of my dialysis career as well. And during my time working as a dialysis technician, I guess the best part of it, are you hearing me now? The best part of it was the fact that I had learning opportunities, especially when I came to Dallas working as a chief technician. I was able to get out and work with the technicians, train some of the new people that were coming on board. And I think the best thing we did is my regional technical manager with Fresenius, we got together. We realized that the biomeds, and I know most of your biomeds out there, and a lot of clinical technicians as well, is that when we got trained, we learned how to do stuff, but we basically not so much were told or taught how to do stuff or why we did what we did. So, back in the day, we had an organization called AANNT, which is American Association of Nephrology Nurses and Technicians. As time went on, the nursing board said, well, we can't have professionals in a nursing organization. So the technicians kind of got thrown out and ANA was formed. But in the meantime, NANT was formed, the National Association of Nephrology Technicians, Technologists was formed. And I'm sure Anthony's familiar with that, and most of you people out there. And they were our educational opportunities as far as the biomed technicians go. And these are some of my mentors. These are some of the speakers at NANT. This was John Sweeney. He actually gave me my training on the central system when we went through, when we had the central system back in St. Louis. We actually started a chapter in dialysis so we could bring the education to the technicians in Dallas. This is one of our chapter meetings. This is one of our speakers here. This is Burke West. He was the president of Nelson Environmental Industries, which is a water treatment thing. And he's got something coming up. And I think it's he's still waiting for FDA 510K approval, but he's got an inline chlorine monitor that everybody's going to be interested in to measure pre and post carbon chlorine. Kind of save us from those dip tabs and all that stuff that you're doing now. But obviously for a while, we have to have a secondary on that. But these were some of the people. This is the president of our chapter, our vice president. She's a patient care technician. There's me as a treasurer, and there's our program chairperson right there. So we put on programs annually. Matter of fact, we got one coming up on the 13th of this month, which I'd like to point out to anybody in the Dallas, Fort Worth, or Texas area. Matter of fact, we've got registrations coming in from New Mexico and Oklahoma already, and Louisiana, but mostly from the Dallas, Fort Worth area and around North Texas area. If anybody's interested in joining NANT, the initial membership is free. You can join for free, but if you want all the perks, you pay $25 a year for a full membership. You get all the webinars and all that other stuff that kind of goes along with it. So anyway, if you want that, you can email me or email Ant. He can kind of get on with you from that. As far as opportunities go, as far as dialysis technicians, all these people that are sitting with me were once patient care or biomeds. This is Heather. She works. She was a patient care technician when I met her, and now she's working as the water specialist for Fresenius. She kind of brought her way up as director of technical services for Fresenius, and went back to work for another clinic, and now she's working back with Fresenius as a water team specialist. Everybody with Fresenius recognizes Larry Park. This is Jim Curtis. I mentioned him before. He got in dialysis because he had to dialyze his mother at home, and he did all this stuff. But he is one of the founders of Home Dialysis Incorporated, which were the forerunners to the Tablo machine made by Outset rather. I keep wanting to say Offset, but it's Outset. He was one of the founders of that one and helped develop that machine. And he was a patient care tech, and he went on to be a facility administrator with Fresenius, and then on to his own company. And then a few of the others. This is Jim Curtis again. Ephraim, he was a patient care tech and worked up in the East Coast. He ended up being the national sales director for Nipro, which is our host company. This is Dan Concepcion. He worked as a Navy medic before he started at St. Joseph. He ended up as being director of technical services for St. Joseph's Hospital in the dialysis unit. And then I got my job with H&S Technical Services, and this is my boss. JC Height. And this is one of our first booths at the NANT conventions, which held annually out in Las Vegas now. But we do stuff for the technician, and definitely for the technician. But they hired me because of my background in dialysis. I was basically started in sales, like most good people do. They start in sales, I guess, and then they go on to bigger and better things. But I started in sales and helped the company kind of get on the road. As you can see, we let's see if I can get this advanced. Yep, one of the big opportunities for me was to go to work with H&S Technical Services. Of course, we're a third party. We do component level repairs on circuit boards for machines. We tried to save money for the dialysis technician going up. We repair parts rather than buying new ones. I know some companies' circuit board, you look, they're $3,000 for a circuit board that we can repair for maybe $250, $500, something like that, which saves a lot of money as far as the budget goes. But here's kind of shows the bench where we, do the repairs and the quality control. And this is one of our techs doing quality control. We actually have machines set up in the in our area, our tech area, that we take the boards that we repair, we actually put them in a machine and run them to make sure that they work properly and along with all the other components. We get all of our spare parts from machines that are donated to us. Basically tear these down, take out the parts we can use and resell, and we sell those as used parts, but as recycled parts. And we do as much recycling as we can with the machines that are donated to us. Of course, we sell full-blown assemblies as well as just separate, valves and things like that. We can sell you a balance chamber perfectly rebuilt. We can sell you one with the valves, without the valves. Of course, here's another guy doing quality control, doing the best bench testing, on some of the circuit boards that we have. And you can see we got quick turnarounds. We got a great warranty program, 6 months, no questions asked. But the biggest part that we do for the technicians that are out there and the people that we serve is we have dedicated support. So if you have trouble troubleshooting your machine, you can call us. We can help you get to the bottom of things and help you kind of get through it. I know working with Fresenius, we kind of went through, you'd have to go through a queue, and when a technician got available, they would call you back. Here pretty well, you can call up and immediately get with the tech, and he can help you with the troubleshooting of your machines. And these are just some of the rebuild parts that we scavenge up and we rebuild, shine up, make them like new. For resale. Now we're going through some QAs here. This is our technical support as well. We also manufacture connectivity solutions. You may have seen us on some of your shelves. All kinds of connectivity solutions for all kinds of meters. We also sell a great cell cleaning solution for your Phoenix meters and your MyRenails, whatever you need for cleaning your cells. But we sell all kind of different, you notice the bottles, and they all fit all your different caddies for your standard solutions and your water test equipment. Now, as far as what I do at H&S now, I still sell and do customer relations for the dialysis side, but I also do field service on our heart-lung machines. Well, another division manufactures a heart-lung bypass equipment for Century, which is now owned by a different company out of St. Louis. But we go out and manufacture and maintain these heart-lung machines on an annual basis or whenever they need repairs and calibration for that. This is our new Century machine coming out. I think the old one was circa 1997 or something like that. But now we're coming out with they're coming out with the new Century. We're building them for them, and we're also servicing for them too. Also, for the biomed techs out there, we manufacture our own stuff. We've got, I don't know if you can see it under the words here, but we got pump shields, and I'll show you how that works. Pump shields basically retrofit right over the pumps in these machines, and they shield the water from any kind of fluid dripping down. And what happens here is the reason we did that and thought about that was for the fact that when we get these motors in to be rebuilt or as exchanges, we notice that there's a bunch of corrosion on the top. And for any of the biomeds out there, you know that the corrosion comes from the hydraulics that are above, and they ruin your pump, cause you to have to buy some more. So we developed these pump shields, and now if any kind of drip, it just drips down into the bottom machine, and it saves on your pumps. Let me go back a little bit. We also sell in the Genius 614, which is a new thing. It will actually, you can hook a balance chamber up there, whether it's on the bench or still on the machine, and it'll test your entire balance chamber in 15 minutes. It'll test all the valves, test the membranes on the inside, test for leaks, tell you exactly what you need to do or replace. It's portable, battery operated. You can see over here where you plug your valves in. See over here where you plug your tubing in. Of course, that's just power supply. Basically, you just hit the start button and you go. And also, along with that, if valves need to be rebuilt, we have rebuild kits. These give you spacers for your for seeing the square valves and the round valves, and spacing for the round valves for your adjusting your plungers. Plus, we got kits. Another one is the BTA 612. It's a portable power source. Plug that in, it'll give you 5, 12, 18, and 24 volts if you want to bench test your pumps, your valves, or anything else that you might have. But we made that available for the biomed techs as well. Back to the 614 and the pump shields. We got that. So let's see what else we got. I think that's all I got as far as slides go. But my kind of what brought me up in my career and what I'm doing now. And I'm still active with NANT. I'm still on the board of directors. And like I said, I gave you the website for that a while ago. And you can come up anytime to dialysistech.net and get a membership with that. Like I said, the first one's free. If you want to take advantage of the free webinars and the contact hours, you can pay your $25, get a full membership. That gives you a little bit of a cost break coming to the meetings, as well as your ability to hold office if you want and share your opportunities and share your knowledge with the other techs. So anything else I can do for you, Ant?
I think that's it. I think we may have one or two questions, but if you want to go ahead and stop your slide, that'll be great.
I would love to answer some questions if you got them.
Yeah, let's see what we got. Well, I'll tell you one thing. First of all, as a biomed myself, that is a lot of information.
I know. I'm sorry. I ran a little bit over.
I'm not worried about that. I think it's informative, especially for those that are new in the field or that are looking to come into the field. That would be helpful to have a background on what it used to be like. I look at it in a few different ways. Number one, I look at it as a biomed tech and all the many things that that go on, that they have come on. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that. So, I think for me, as a biomed tech, looking at as a biomed, seeing what dialysis was compared to what it is now, it's absolutely fantastic. And then I look at it as from the patient perspective too. My thought goes, of course, I ran on dialysis. My thought goes back to what those individuals, they really were trailblazers. And I know it's been said that many a times into, what we have today. I know there's people that say, well, it could be better. Yeah, it could be, but look what it still could be.
Look what it was. Yeah.
Look what it was, look at how far it has advanced. I mean, you're talking about the older machines, and I know the newer machines, some of those things I've had privileges of working on. I want to get into all those details, but even in the water treatment systems, and I know they've got heat disinfect now versus chemicals, and they've got all these newer technologies that are a little bit. So to me, this from both as a biomed and a patient standpoint, I'll look at it at both sides. I'm like, wow, we have advanced.
Yeah, it was kind of explained to me back several years ago. Like I said, I started in 75, so don't do the addition. Please don't do the addition. My hair's wide enough. But it was explained to me that dialysis it's kind of developing on a funnel type scale, where we had these wide things open, a lot of theories, a lot of things going on, like let's try this, let's try that, but it's funneling down into a pinpoint to where we have the knowledge now. And like, I told you about, on purpose, I told you about using the paddles to mix the dialysis. Okay, now compare that to the introduction of sterile dialysis, sterile dialysate, microfilters in the machines for the water, making sterile water for the dialysis, not having to use saline anymore, but using the sterile dialysate in order to replace, do patient, fluid replacement for the patients, and all the meds and all the things, and, the way the machines have come down. Basically, the machines just got smaller. They still all do the same thing. They still take the water, they make the dialysate, they heat the water, they monitor, they do the patient monitoring, and then it all goes down the drain eventually. They just do them in different ways. And obviously the dialyzer and membrane technology is a lot different now too.
That is true. That is true. And I think, for any of our audience out there that would like to potentially, look into getting, because I think a biomedical career is a good career. It's definitely something. And this is the thing I talked about with our last session with Marco was, there's people that have been on dialysis, such as myself at the time, that, they may not feel adequate enough to get into the medical field because of nursing. They don't want to do the nursing. They don't want to do the direct, but they may have different other set of skills. They may have been a car mechanic. They may have did little computer electronic boards. The thing is, you can take those same skill sets, even though you were a patient, maybe you got transplanted or maybe whatever, you can take those skill sets and apply them to actually impact, once again, those individuals that are on dialysis, such as yourself. And this is one thing, it's called building you. This is not just for, it's not just for those, it's for everybody really to look into maybe a different pathway.
Yeah, I'm thinking the advantage I had too is because I learned the clinical side because the mechanical side was so simple when I stepped in. Obviously, eventually I had to go to full-time biomed because things were a little bit more complicated, and the machines were getting smaller, everything was becoming integrated. But it gave me a patient perspective. I was always friends with the patient. The patients knew who I was when I walked out in the clinic. They knew what I did. And, most of them were thankful anyway.
It depended on the day, right? And how they were feeling. And if they had a little too much sodium, I had a tooth sub that made me dance.
How long they had to wait in the waiting room, but, I was privileged because I could understand where they were coming from. I could understand where the nurses were coming from. And of course, biomed part too. But it was great to learn, about water treatment and all those mentors that I had, growing up, if you will. And, learn about electronics, learn about the machines, and especially from John Sweeney. He really got into the physics of dialysis. A lot of different things, things that come up like, oh, well, you kind of have rebound of, I don't know if you ever talked about the rebound of the dialysate. Once the dialysate went through a hollow fiber dialyzer, it was, by the time it was 3/4 of the way through, it wasn't any good anymore. So the blood initially coming through wasn't getting dialyzed. If you can envision that, because the dialysate would flow this way and the blood would flow that way. By the time the dialysis got up here, it had too much effluent in it, and you weren't actually dialyzing in the top portion of your dialyzer. So, gee, I didn't understand that, and now I do. And I found out the physics and where all the pores and membranes and all that different stuff. And I think it was a real advantage for me to learn the clinical side. And I would advise and give my advice to anybody who has a chance to cross train to do it. Like my friend Heather, she was a patient care technician, but she learned the biomed side, and look where she's at today. She's way up in the corporate level, or water specialist for Fresenius now.
Right. The one thing I would not recommend is try to get the training of a patient. Don't do that. If you don't have to do it, don't do it, please. I mean, if you got to do it, that's one thing. You're in a scenario like I was, and that's one thing. But don't do that on purpose, if at all possible. That's what we don't want. If you want to come into into the field, we are more than welcome to. We're more than happy to welcome you with open arms, and I'll be happy to share with you my journey on that, but just don't experience that for yourself. To me, that's one of those words, beware. Don't take your hypertension seriously, take your diabetes seriously, so you don't have to be on dialysis, rather be able to provide that service to those that may need it at the time. I mean, things happen, life happens. That's what happened to me. So, but Charlie, we had, it's been a great session. I can tell you right now that I have taken a lot back, and I truly mean that. Is a biomed myself, to be able to take that, and I'll definitely look at things a lot different. I look at my machines. It's like, it's not that terrible to look at. And when you were explaining all that stuff, I'm like, man, my first thought is, man, I'd like to get my hands on one of the machines, and it's like, but what would I do with it? Once I did, we would learn it. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think they make coil dialyzers anymore.
I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. But you know what? We're running a little over time, and that's okay. That's why we gave you a few hours. I don't really, other than just that right there, I think that's probably good for today. Charlie, you did an amazing job. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank my boss at H&S and all the people there who helped me prepare the presentation and practice with me, and gave me the confidence to get on air with you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you presenting at this session, the Building You. This is the last session of the day. I learned from last time, do no more than 2 or 3. Otherwise, you'll be wore out by the end of the second day. Last time it was definitely a challenge, but I really appreciate it. I mean, I think you've just shared so much within that whole speech. You shared the passion, why you do what you do. You've shared, all the different things. It's just been wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I actually had a closing slide, but I think I downloaded the wrong. Oh no, I didn't. I thought I downloaded the wrong slide. But if you want my
go for it.
Contact information, I have to click on you again.
I think you still have. Let's see.
I need to do that.
Yeah, there you go.
I need to. I just got to get the right one. But anyway, this is my thank you to you all out there in virtual land, and to you, to Anthony. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak and share my story. I feel a little embarrassed because it was kind of all about me and not about you or anybody else. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows that dialysis is it's not a dead end. You can you can advance from dialysis into whatever you want to be. You can go to business school. You can get on the administrative side of dialysis. You can get on the biomed if you're a clinical technician. You can get on the clinical side if you're a biomed. You can go work with any of these companies, water treatment companies, dialysis machine companies, anything like that. And I know they're all looking for field service people if you're ever interested. But there's my contact information up on the screen. If anybody wants to email me and ask me any questions or got anything going, I'd be more than happy to give you a shot. And I think I'll have to find out from my boss if I can email the PowerPoint to you so that you can kind of go over those slides and look at them again.
Yep. And also this session is actually already back on, it's already on all of our social media channels. So anybody that would like to go back and rewatch all of this, rewatch the whole session, they're more than welcome to go on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. And I think that's it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think that's about it. But you can always go back and listen to it. I'm sure I will be going back and listen to some of these things as well.
So. Yeah, well, thank you again. And Anthony, you got a great platform here. You're doing a great job on kidney trails. And I certainly appreciate you opening it up to other people in the industry as well.
Well, definitely. And I think Biomed is definitely one of those that my old boss used to say we were the duck's feet. Nobody really saw us. But if they ever stopped moving, the duck would stop going. So, it's time to give a little bit of what would I say? It's time to give a little bit light to the duck's feet. And I hope and I'm grateful that we were able to do that today.
Yeah, I'm glad I could be here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, guys. And we will see you tomorrow at our first session at 10 o'clock tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time, AM, with Mandy Tilton, Chief Nursing Officer at Big Yada. She used to work in the dialysis field, and she's going to be talking about investing in yourself.